Now that is some pretty cool box art. Now I'll admit to not having been a particularly big fan of the show, but I really like the ship design. It's really attractive to me. Appropriately primitive, but still modern enough for, modern sensibilities. If they had tried to go too far retro, it would have just looked silly, and people wouldn't have stood for it. And especially now with the reissued versions of the original series, the remastered show with the enhanced special effects, it kind of makes it come a little more in line with how this ship looks a little bit. More metallic, more panel detailed, etc. So now all of Star Trek seems to kind of share more of a natural evolutionary design ethic. I'm deliberately going out of my way to not mention the J.J. Abrams reboot movies, because I'm on record as having said that first one I didn't like, the second one I really didn't like. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. As I said, the box art is very attractive, very dramatic. Box sides similarly have rendered shots of the Enterprise from various different angles. Same angle. There we go. There's another one. Kind of showing off the kind of retro sleekness of it. And as is typical with Polar Lights, same as with the last kit, backside has some bio detail, some call-outs, clear windows, info about the display stand, some info about cross cells between the other two 350th Enterprises, and a big, over 2 feet in length, which I can verify because I remember how big mine was before its unfortunate demise, and it was pretty huge. Anyway, let's take a look at what we got. First up. It's molded in much darker gray than the earlier version, as I recall. The initial version of this kit was a kind of a pale, warm gray. This one is very dark, very interesting. Nice detailing. You can see here is the bridge dome. You've got the cutouts for all the windows, nicely molded. There's some insert parts. I'm not sure what those are for. Probably docking ports of some kind. Quite a lot of windows on this ship. Considering how primitive it is, it's kind of interesting. Lots of nice panel detailing on the pontoons, or the roots for the pontoons. There's an insert part that goes in here. It's some kind of intercooler gadget that, if I'm not mistaken, was inspired by the turbocharger on the I think the P-38. Which, in fact, I think the entire ship was kind of inspired by that, the twin boom design. Overall, I like it. The molding is good. Panel line detail is good. It's not fine. It's not really tiny, fine details anywhere, but look fine to me. Saucer bottom is similar. You've got some slightly more fine detail here. This is where the docking bays are on the ship. This would appear to be the only remolded part on the ship itself. I think that would be the socket for the display stand. Yeah, you can see it looks fairly well anchored. I would say fairly well centered as well, so it should have no issues balancing. Cargo bay doors, you can see here on the bottom, fairly nicely molded. Some venting detail. Torpedo tubes. There's a little bit of flash, maybe, a little bit on there. Nothing too bad. And then same was on the top, I forgot to mention, there's a big plug here that's got to be knocked out. But otherwise it looks really good. And getting into the clear parts already, which, much like the other large-scale Enterprises, there are many. Few windows. These look like probably saucer edge windows. Maybe saucer top windows here. Some other windows I don't quite recognize. These would be the impulse engines, the bridge dome, and the sensor dome on the bottom. This is the housing for the main deflector right here. Looks as good as anything, you know, no flash to speak of. Looks fine. In fact, better, I think, than some of the other reissues of Polar Light stuff that I've seen with clear parts. Their Enterprise refit had a lot of flash, as I recall. Here we have 3 identical sets of runners, so we'll just take a look at one of them. And basically it's more windows. Not really sure what else. I think this is crystal on one of the warp nacelles, maybe somewhere. There's an observation dome on the... there's 2 of them, actually. One on the dorsal and one on the ventral primary hull. I believe this is one of them. It's a 2-part thing. And one thing that I actually do wish that I'd lit on my my version, which would have looked pretty cool, but whatever. I can always do it if I do this one ever. 2 more identical runners. These are the nacelle parts. I think the inside and outside plasma conduit things. Then you've got, of course, the Bassard collector, and then right here, I think it was out of frame, and then this one here, which is interesting in that it has pre-drilled holes, placement holes for LEDs. Should you choose to light them, you can just insert them directly into the holes. Actually looks pretty neat. And if you have like multiple colors and like a strobing effect, it would create a pretty nifty effect with the kind of projections and notches and whatever that they got cut into that. Which is something I wish that I could have done in my initial build of this kit. Speaking of warp nacelles, 2 matched pairs. Once again, we'll only look at one of them. You got some nice ribbing detail here in the back that, as memory serves, is a real pain to work around when trying to eliminate that seam between the 2 halves. The rest of the nacelle, not so much. It's fairly straightforward, just some straight line across on the top and bottom to fix that seam, so no big deal. Casting is nice. Got some good molded detail here in the front, much like on the smaller one. And the same stand as came with all the other large-scale ones, which is just a larger version of the smaller ones. Only difference is really it's reinforced here in the bottom and doesn't have the little ball-jointed gimmick. Nacelle pylons here. You can see there's some venting detail on here. Molding on them is actually a little bit softer than some of the other parts I've noticed. I remember when I did mine, these kind of E-shaped projections, panels, whatever you want to call them. They were very challenging but fun to mask off and paint. This whole ship was actually a lot of fun to paint. Then these are attachments for the warp nacelles and the main deflector. Here's the remains of the pontoons, or whatever it is you want to call them, the pylons, and that weird pod, which I always thought was like an aft weapons pod, until I actually built the original version of this kit and realized that there's no torpedo tube or anything on it. But it seems like it'd be a good spot for a warp engine, you know, in this separate contained pod that could just detach from the rest of the ship. But as far as I can remember from when I actually watched the show, I think the warp engine is actually inside the saucer, which seems like a really bad idea for a big new prototype. But you know, same as everywhere else, the molding is fine. A little bit soft. There's some vents here that could be a little bit finer, but I'm not sure what these are for. I don't really remember where they go, but they look interesting. Here we got some surface detail parts. I believe these are these go inside the deflector dish. Some sensor platforms, more sensor platforms. Actually, there's quite a lot of sensor bits and pieces all over the place. This is the aftmost section of the saucer. It is, I believe, an airlock and kind of an extra vehicular, an EVA staging area. This is the platform that sits directly in front of it. Housings for the impulse engines. Rear. I think this panel fits over part of the secondary, or the part of the primary hull on the aft upper section. I think, I'm not sure exactly where. And these are actually backup impulse engines, as memory serves, which is interesting that they didn't include clear parts for them, because they were actually shown lit a couple of times on the show, as I recall. A lot of model is what they've done is they've actually drilled out that opening there and just made their own clear part and lit them themselves. I didn't when I did mine. I didn't have that kind of skill at the time. And then you got more deflector dish parts, and I think these go in the nacelles somewhere. And we were doing so well with this one too. Here I thought we were going to go the entire box open and not have any parts that broke loose, but here we have a part that came loose. This appears to be mostly saucer sidewalls. Lots of openings for windows, an airlock on either side of the main saucer, more sensor platforms, and well, they might be thrusters, I'm not really sure. But they're in matched pairs, and then the two here just have kind of some venting detail. And last up for runners, we have two more matched pairs, which have just the last additional surface detail. We've got I don't remember what they're called. They're like intercoolers or something on the warp nacelles. They're on the inboard and outboard sides of this version. They don't have them on the refit version. Only on the inboard section. Some more. I think these are actually the sensors themselves. You can see they're kind of little dish-shaped. I had a better focus there. They're little dish-shaped parts that fit into the sensor platforms all over. We've got torpedo tubes, docking collars, more thrusters, more docking hatch parts. And these are what I was telling you about before, is those intercoolers on the top of the intercoolers, or whatever the hell they're called. They look neat on the top of the pylons. And the standard instruction manual, starting with the rear section of the pylons. That refers to them as the upper and lower struts. Then the warp nacelles, lower hull interior, lower hull exterior, upper hull interior, upper hull exterior. Final assembly of the upper section, saucer sidewalls, assembly of the lower hull, final assembly of the primary hull and pontoons, pylons, whatever, and then final assembly of the ship itself, an attachment to the base, which it says here is actually a metal tube, not as opposed to a metal rod, so you can run wires up through it if you do want to light it, which will make your life a lot easier than mine was when I did my lighting project years ago. Then finally we have our marking guide, with no painting guide, which is interesting. Where's the painting guide for this thing? As it happens, the paint guide, you can see the color chart is right here, and then it just advises you to paint as you go. Just your callouts for individual colors as you go. And finally, our marking sheet, which, as I said in my earlier vlog, was the part that gave me the most trouble with the entire build. Mine was actually really light on markings because the sheet was so old that the individual, trying really hard not to say decal and piss somebody off, but I'm going to say it, decal, whatever. I already broke my New Year's resolution. Are you happy now, YouTube? This is what you've done to me. The individual decals, many of them were just shattering like crazy, especially the really fine one, like all of these individual little lines, or many of these little dots. I'm not sure what they are exactly, but the printing you can see is actually really nicely done. They were just splitting in half, and it just was too much hassle to deal with. These grid lines here, which go on the upper saucer, were actually giving me the most trouble because not only were they shattering, but they were also getting twisted, and I was just having a real bitch of a time getting everything done. So I opted for as minimal of a marking scheme as I could get away with, and opted to build the kit finally as the ISS Enterprise from the Mirror Universe episode, the two-parter. I believe it was called In a Mirror Darkly. But it wasn't all that noticeable, the differences. But the sheet, it looks really nice. I think these are the doors for the cargo bays, which you can see there's some nice printing on them as well. There's some, you can make out that says stand clear, except it's upside down. Enterprise there, nice and clear. Very, very well printed overall. I think this is a really, really good sheet. I'm not sure if it was remastered for this reissue or if it's just a straight reprinting of the original kit from years ago, but it looks really good. So I suppose the real question is, when am I ever going to build these? I don't have an answer to that. I still have in a closet back in Victoria a dozen, maybe close to 20 kits just stashed away at my parents' house. Most of them I'll never build, or certainly not anytime soon, simply because, well, they're way out back there, I'm out here. But, you know, I don't have anywhere to do any modeling. You know, I'm in a rented apartment. I'm not really that comfortable setting up a spray booth and airbrushing in a rented apartment. You know, if it was my own home before, it was my own condo, I owned the place. If there was, you know, overspray or damage to any walls, it was only me that had to deal with it. You know, here I'm responsible to someone else to keep this place in good order. So, you know, it's not likely I'm ever going to get set up to do any real industrial scale modeling like I used to do until I get like a permanent place. Like, if I'd like to buy a house sometime. I would say that's kind of in my 5-year plan, is if I stay out here long term, in 5 years I want to own a house with like a backyard heated shop garage with a built-in exhaust system, so I can get back to painting, you know, on a large scale. But you know, the big Enterprise is probably going to sit in a closet and not get touched except by dust and possibly by my hands if I move. But between now and then, it's probably not gonna move out of that closet for a long time. The little one I'll probably do is just a quick hand painted or possibly just spray painted build in the next 6 months to a year. Just to try it out. You know, maybe when the spring comes around and the weather's a little better, because it's too damn cold out here in the winter to go out on the patio to do any spray painting. Because I sure as hell can't do that inside. But you know, I may do that, you know, in the spring. Do it just as a quick build, just to try it out, just to see what the kit is like compared to the original one, the original version, I mean. But yeah, the big Enterprise is probably not going to see any assembly for a long time unless I sell it and someone else builds it. But more than likely, if I do any kind of large-scale enterprise, it's going to be the TOS version, because I still have that. It's still in a closet at my parents' house, and if I'm going to do a large-scale enterprise, I want it to be that one, because I've never built it before. And it's such a nice-looking kit. It's a brand-new kit. Well, almost brand new. It's been out for a year and a half or so by now. But, you know, this one I've already done. So I'm in no big hurry to do it again. But it's nice to take a look at. Nice to see. It's nice for it to be available again, because it's been a long time since this has been on the shelf. And a friend of mine at the hobby shop back home that I like to shoot the breeze with when I'm home was telling me that the market for all those original issue NX-01 that were stashed away in some guy's closet for 10 years, man, are those guys pissed that the market just fell out. I shouldn't laugh, because I mean, I used to kind of speculate on stuff like that with some kinds of toys, but it just kind of makes me laugh to think of people trying to make money off of, essentially, you know, not to belittle the hobby, but in the minds of a lot of people, these are still toys, and not really high priority for your average person. But anyway, enough rambling. I'm still getting used to doing vlogs again. It's been a while, so I'm out of practice. So as much as I used to ramble, I think I'm probably rambling even more. See here, I'm rambling about how much I ramble. That's how much I frickin' ramble. So I'm going to shut this off before I run down my battery completely. And I'm going to say thank you everyone out there for watching. I'm going to be posting more on Twitter, letting people know when and what I'm posting. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so. You can reach me here. Or there'll be a link down there somewhere that you can find me at. So please do that if you want to. If not, no skin off my back. So thanks everyone out there for watching, and happy modeling.